wasn't ever repaired.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Good morning, Sue. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. And this is the first time we've really got together since our writing retreat.
Yes, which was back in May.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that came up in there was women travel writers. And I think you've now looked at one of the major women travel writers of Lady Mary Wortley Montagu.
That's right. What I thought we could do gradually, over a few weeks or whatever, is look at a series of women travel writers, because I think if one looks at their work as a whole over centuries, it's a very impressive body of work, and to tackle it all kind of chronologically. Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, I'll just call her Lady Mary later. She's a pioneer. She did her travelling in the early 18th century, and I think she's a great starting point. So I've only just read this, and it has immediately become one of my favourite travel books. And the book is so full of colour and drama. It's amazing to me that nobody's made a film of her life, but apparently nobody ever has. I mean, perhaps it'll happen someday.
Well, if we start with Lady Mary,
yeah.
One of the things that I think we talked about doing was also looking at women that weren't so privileged, and I was going to look at Dervla Murphy.
Yes.
Down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a few that we could look at.
Absolutely.
But this is definitely the first one, and this is the first book, The Turkish Embassy Letters, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu. Yeah.
So the backstory here is that Lady Mary, she was an aristocrat, an English aristocrat, and she married a man who was appointed to be the British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire. And not only that, but he was given the job of trying to mediate a peace between the Austrian and Ottoman empires, which were at war. And, Britain being ever sensitive to shifting geopolitics on the European continent, kind of would have been happy if the war had ended. So because her husband had been given this job, they had to go to Vienna, to talk first to the Austrians. So they did this journey from London to Constantinople overland. And all in all, I think, and then they lived in Turkey for a while. So all in all, this covers a period of some 2 years. And I would say that there are kind of three things that strike me about the book. One is the amazing variety of topics, and I'll try to bring that out as I talk about it. So tremendous variety, and then there's the whole kind of tone, which is very sympathetic to the Ottoman way of life. In particular, the status of women. So the tone is kind of empathetic and she's reliable. I mean, this has stood the test of time. I mean, commentators have said, this is accurate stuff. This isn't the traveller, spreading highly exaggerated, unreliable, information.
So were these letters then?
Yeah, they were real letters, and they were sent to quite a variety of people. Some of them went to Alexander Pope, who was obviously one of the leading English poets of his day. At least one goes to the Princess of Wales and her her aristocratic pals, quite a circle. So there's an Italian dramatist gets quite a few of her letters. So they're real letters written while she was in foreign parts, but they weren't published until after her death. So her dates are she lived from 1689 to 1762. The travels were between 1716 and 1718, but the book was actually published, as I say, after her death. So
I've seen that she wrote also to her sister.
Oh, she wrote a lot to her sister. Yeah, Lady Mar. Yes, you're right. She got some quite chunky letters. So I mean, the last of the three things that I would emphasize about the book is that, I mean, she really was. She was a pioneer. I mean, she was describing things that no other Western woman had ever described before. She is a very early observer of the kind of the way of life in Muslim lands.
And did she have to wear clothes that were similar?
She certainly wore the veil, and she's very sympathetic to the wearing of the veil. Yeah. She did. Yeah. Now then, so that's the historical background. So I talked about the variety of topics. So if I tackle parts of her journey kind of chronologically, that will give you some idea. So the first big city, I mean, she's in Vienna. So she writes to Alexander Pope and tells him all about the opera and the theatre and what have you in Vienna. And in another letter, again, she's very, very sympathetic treatment of this. She tells us that the women in Vienna, the kind of the upper class women, that it was the normal thing for women to have lovers, and the lovers had a social status. So if you wanted to invite Lady Schönbrunn or whatever, to a dinner party, it was necessary to invite both the husband and the lover. If you didn't invite the lover, that was very much a social faux pas. So it's kind of interesting stuff. And she's not remotely censorious. She just says this is the way things are done here. And it wasn't only Vienna. I think went into Italy as well, for example, that social custom. So the high life of Vienna, and then heading east from there, she's travelling in a period that we now call towards the end of the Little Ice Age, it's called now. So she crosses the Danube when it's completely frozen, and just rides across the Danube over the ice in a carriage. So you get the flavour of this rather cold era. And then, I mean, to my mind, one of the really striking passages is she gets to what is now it will be within Serbia, and this is a letter. This is another letter to Alexander Pope, right? So I'll read this. As I say, she's crossing what is now northern Serbia, and she's going over what had been a battlefield. Remember, the Austrians and the Ottomans are at war. So her letter about this is dated in February 1717. So in August of 1716, there had been a battle, the Battle of Petrovaradin, which was a big Austrian victory. Austrian troops led by Prince Eugene of Savoy had beaten a bigger Ottoman army. So she writes, "The marks of that glorious bloody day are yet recent, the field being strewed with the skulls and carcasses of unburied men, horses, and camels. I could not look without horror on such numbers of mangled human bodies, and reflect on the injustice of war that makes murder not only necessary, but meritorious." And there's more in the same vein, saying what a dud idea war is. So quite powerful stuff. And then in Serbia, in a letter to the Princess of Wales, she describes how the Ottoman authorities provide to her husband and herself an armed guard, because there's a lot of banditry in Serbia. Their armed guard consists of 500 elite troops, Janissaries. I mean, how many people travel with a guard of 500 troops? But they did. And then a bit further on, when she gets to the city of Sofia, the present-day capital of Bulgaria, then a city within the Ottoman Empire, she has this account which is of historic interest, because she goes into a Turkish bath for women, and inside the bath she reckons there are about 200 women, naked for the most part. She keeps, I think, some rather Western clothes on. They want to loosen her shirt at least to make sure she's not sort of imprisoned in awful Western garb. But it's a very, very sympathetic account, and she describes the Turkish bath for women as like a coffee house, you know, and she talks about their majestic grace.
What comes to my mind is that she had access to women that male writers of the time would never have had access to.
Oh, never, absolutely.
And she would have had stories and tales and experiences that would never been recorded by anybody else.
Oh, exactly. I mean, she says in the context of her writing about her visit to the women's bath in Sofia that for a man to go in trying to get that would be death. You know, there's no messing around.
Okay.
So it's an account which is of historic interest. So they do eventually reach the Ottoman Empire, Constantinople, and again it's a very sympathetic description of Ottoman society. And again, she gets access to places like harems, where no man would have been able to get to, and she has this opinion that Ottoman women, I suppose again she's kind of talking about upper levels of society, but she says of Ottoman women, they are perhaps freer than any ladies in the universe. Is her description, and she learned Turkish, so she could have a conversation with them. So one of the things that she did when she was in the Ottoman Empire, and this is like her, if you like, she's got two claims to fame. One is this book, and the other is the fact that she was a very, very early pioneer of vaccination against smallpox. So
I think she'd had smallpox as a child.
She'd had smallpox when she was in her mid-20s.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, so not very long before this big trip.
Right.
So she was 27 when she started this journey. I think she'd had smallpox when she was 25. And she had, of course, she survived, and it had disfigured her. So a huge experience, and a brother of hers died of smallpox, so she had very close encounters. And she learned that it was part of kind of folk medicine in Ottoman lands that they injected people with smallpox. This was not something that was done in the West, but she and her husband were traveling with their young son, who was 5 when they were in Constantinople, and she had him vaccinated. So he is reckoned to have been the first British person ever to have been vaccinated against smallpox. And one of her letters gives an account of how he's he's doing well, after the vaccination. And then when she got back to England, she became a strong campaigner in favour of inoculation. It wasn't until the second half of the 19th century that Jenner came along and used cowpox instead of smallpox from people.
So that's where the name Vaca for cow and vaccination came from.
I hadn't thought of that. I'm sure you're right. yeah, because Jenner did use cowpox.
Yeah.
So these, as I say, these two claims to fame, and
didn't she also, wasn't there kind of a group vaccination or inoculation or whatever you want to call it, tried in one of the jails locally, and 7 prisoners survived?
Yes, you're right. That was in England.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's what turned heads a little in the science community, because she got a lot of backlash about it, didn't she?
She did. The established medical profession didn't like the idea. It's the usual sort of thing. But gradually, some of the royal houses in Europe, accepted it. I think Catherine of Russia, later got vaccinated. So it faced opposition, but eventually kind of became widespread. So partly the attraction of the book is just the sheer energy of the woman. So like when she was in the Ottoman Empire, she had a daughter, and one of her letters she says something to one of her correspondents: "Having nothing better to do, I have produced a daughter." So it's that sort of lovely light tone, having nothing better to do, and she's she keeps at it. I mean, she wanted to go and see the Hagia Sophia Mosque, the building that had been a Christian cathedral, of course, for centuries, and then after the Turkish conquest in the 15th century became a mosque. So she approached the governor of Constantinople several times, asking for permission, and she says eventually a few learned Muslim clerics sort of got together and thought about whether this would be okay, and eventually decided it would be all right. And she went and visited the Hagia Sophia, perhaps the first, woman to do that from outside of Islam since the Turkish conquest. I'm guessing, and she's just always taking opportunities to see whatever's out there. So on the way back, because they didn't have to go to Vienna, they went back home by ship, and one of the ports that they stopped in was Tunis. So by moonlight, because it's super hot at night, she goes out and in the carriage and sees the ruins of Carthage. So she squeezes a lot in. I mean, as you can guess, I'm an enthusiast for this book.
Didn't she at some point, her and her husband split, and she had an Italian romantic lover. Well, I don't know if it was a lover, but a romantic liaison that she followed to Italy. Was something?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. She and her husband effectively sort of split up, and she did it. Well, I think he was her lover. There was herself and a male friend of hers, Lord Hervey, who both fell in love with him. So there's a little bit of competition. And while on the subject of, Lady Mary and men, I mean, I mentioned Alexander Pope, and there was a famous falling out between the two of them. I think the story that was told within her family was that Pope had made a declaration of love, and that Lady Mary had laughed at him. Whether that's true, I think modern day scholars are perhaps a little sceptical. I mean, there could have been some element of professional jealousy, but that was a relationship which for years was a close friendship. I mean, she would have been, from Alexander Pope's perspective, perhaps a rare example of a woman who was super educated. She was a conversation partner about many things, but they did have a falling out, and that wasn't ever repaired. Do you have any more questions, Sue?
No, just a reflection.
Yeah.
This idea of courage.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say she was courageous at that time. And that concept of courage versus resilience, I guess, will thread through all these discussions. And that she, I think she's a good example to kick off with, especially, but also, I don't want to put a warning on it. She came from, but only in the sense of that she had access because of her husband's, power, and because he was an ambassador. Yeah. So she didn't travel by herself in that sense.
Oh,
but
no.
That's not to decry all the things that she did.
Yeah.
It's just to mark it at that point. But I think this, for our first discussion, has been really useful. And I hope that I'm looking forward to the next few that we do together. Yeah,
I thought we could perhaps do the Victorian era traveller Mary Kingsley, who went to Africa. So that's for another day. But you're right. I mean, she was super privileged. As I say, an armed guard of 500 Janissaries to protect her in Serbia. This was sort of aristocrat plus territory. It's because her husband was trying to negotiate this peace. So she was able to go to places that, very few other people would have been able to go to.
Good. Well, thanks, Stephen. Hope everybody enjoyed these few reflections and quite a lot of reflections and facts. So see you next time. Bye for now.
Yeah, bye for now. That wasn't ever repaired. That wasn't.